What's going on, everybody? Welcome into this all new Pack-A-Day Live. It is great to be doing a Pack-A-Day Live. It's been a hot second. Usually happy hour members Q&A, but this Friday, not going to be available. Also just kind of wanting to watch some college basketball around that time. So figure we do a Pack-A-Day Live today at 7 p.m. I'll probably turn on the tournament games, the play-ins right after this. I know they're not technically play-ins, but let's be real, they're play-ins. But yeah, once we're done here, I'll definitely be doing that. But otherwise, in the meantime, it's great to be chatting with you guys. As always, get to as many chats as possible. Should have the next hour or so. If it goes a little bit longer, awesome. If it goes a little bit less, it's fine. But we'll get to as many questions as we can. Super chats will go to the top of the list. You do need to be a subscriber, not a member. You don't have to pay anything, but you do need to be a subscriber to get those questions in. So just hit subscribe, and then you're going to be able to ask any questions that you want. We get to super chats first, member chats, and like I said, we should get to about as many as we possibly can over the next hour or so. So without further ado, let's get started. Danny Joe Heron, thank you so much for becoming a brand new YouTube member. Really appreciate that a ton, as well as Keva Rahimi, appreciate you as well. For those of you who have not signed up to become members yet, now's a great time to do so. Still time to get into our bracket challenge. Bracket challenges for members. You can find it over on the YouTube page, on the posts or whatever. It'll be out there if you're a member, and it has the password and everything to log in. Winner gets a $100 Packer Pro Shop gift card. So make sure to check that out if you have not done so already, especially obviously if you're a member. Chicken, I'm glad you brought this up. Here's something interesting. The Jags are reportedly listening to offers about Travon Walker. I would definitely give up a second plus for him. Barely 24 and 20.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Sign me up. Here's the thing. I don't think he would actually cost that much money. I think you're probably looking at a little bit less than that. It's tough to say. You never quite know. He's got a 1 year left on his deal. He's got a reasonable contract that you would take on. I think it's a little bit over like 10 million. Let me double check it really quick before I speak that into existence. It would be, actually, he's got 11.8 million on the cap, but most of that is signing bonus, actually. So you'd actually only be taking on, 5.8 million, basically. So that is a really easy contract to take on. You do have his 5th year option coming up, which you'd have to consider if you're trading for him. I'm assuming you would pick up his 5th year option. Maybe a second, maybe something around there. That actually seems a little bit high for that, but maybe I could be wrong. He hasn't been great. He is a Packers type through and through. Very, very much so. Hasn't obviously lived up to the number one pick expectations. The only reason I haven't talked more about this, Chicken, is because at least the source that I saw was not a reliable source at all. I won't drag the person that it is, but the one source that I saw out there that was potentially reporting on this was not worthwhile, I guess, is what you would say. So that's why I haven't talked about it more. But assuming he would be available, and by the way, this is one where a lot of these trades that people bring up, they always throw Jair Alexander in, and I'm like, yeah, they probably don't want Jair, especially at that contract. I could actually see Jacksonville being interested in Jair. Now, it wouldn't be Jair for Walker straight up, but I could see Walker in the third, Walker for Jair in like a third. I'd have to look at it a little bit more to give a super strong take on which one would be or like what the right trade value would be, but something in that realm seems about right. And I think he would fit well within this defense. I think he would be a nice player along the edge. I think Walker and Gary would be nice bookends. I don't think it's going to be like a massive game changer along the defensive line, but you probably get somebody that's a little further along in their development than anyone that you're going to get in the draft. And it doesn't really preclude you, if you're giving up like a 3rd round pick, to change anything from a draft standpoint. In fact, I don't think it's impossible that you could go from like pick 23 to say pick 30 and maybe pick up a 3rd rounder in exchange. So maybe you get off the Jair situation, you trade away a 3rd, you pick up a 3rd for moving down. So you're basically moving down your 1st round pick, getting off of Jair and picking up Walker. I could see something like that working. They have the salary cap to make it work. They could still pick up his 5th year option. So it's not entirely unreasonable to me. Again, I think the biggest challenge here is he actually available, and what would Green Bay be willing to give up in that situation? But it's actually a very unique trade, and one that I don't think is like this absurd thought process. I think it actually could make sense for both sides. Thanks, Andy. First of all, Dylan, thank you so much for the super chat. How does Hardman's skill set compare to Reed's, and what is the difference between kick returner and punt returner? What makes a player good at one over the other? So first of all, I think there is maybe a little bit redundancy if you're looking at wide receiver with Reed over Hardman, but Reed's just a much, much better player at that position. I think the nice thing about Hardman is you can play him anywhere on offense. You can play him at outside wide receiver. You can play him in the slot. You can even play him in the backfield. He does have that versatility. I think Reed has the ability to win downfield just a little bit better. Hardman has not been that down the field player. He only has one, or in the last 3 years, he does not have a catch over 37 yards, I should say. So he has not been that downfield threat where Reed has shown the ability to do that from time to time. And then I think, Reed is, Hardman is probably a little bit of a better returner than what Reed has been. I've not been super impressed with Jaden Reed as a returner, which is really sort of mind numbing because he's really good after the catch. He's good in end around situations and things like that. So it's been a little bit surprising that he hasn't been better as a punt returner. As far as your second part of that question, for kick returner, punt returner, I always look at it as a punt returner. You need to have a level of decisiveness to start getting north and south. And you have to have a little bit of wiggle while getting up or getting north and south, right? You start going horizontally as a punt returner, and it's not going to work. You also, again, have the ability, or you have to have the ability to make some people miss. This is not one that you're just looking at straight line speed and maybe one cut and go. This has got to be the ability to juke a guy here, there, to maybe, again, you don't want to go too left and right, but be able to, maybe make a cutback when needed. I think those agility attributes are a little bit better. Obviously, you have to have better hands as a punt returner. If you muff a kick return, especially if you're catching it near the end zone or anything like that, it's going to probably be a touchback anyway. Not that you can have bad hands as a kick returner, but you're less likely to have something catastrophic happen if you drop it. As a punt returner, if you muff it, it is going to likely end up in catastrophe. So again, hands and just the ability to have that hand-eye coordination too, of like, got to look at the rush, got to look up, got to look at the rush, got to look up. And then kick returner, I think we're actually seeing more running back skills pay off a little bit more in the kick return game now with these new kick return rules. And a lot of time it is kind of like a one cut and go. Make that initial read, cut against whether it's against the grain or whatever you're looking at ahead of you, make that cut, maybe break a tackle or two. I think tackle breaking is a little bit more of a benefit when it comes to kick returns, and you got to be able to run through some contact. Whereas again, punt return, I think making people miss can be a little bit more advantageous. So I do think there's different skill sets. And then there's the every once in a while player that can do both. And I think Hardman's a better punt returner than he is a kick returner, which is what I would predict with his skill set, but he can do a little bit of both. But I think the big thing here is he's a better, or that he would actually be, I think right now on Green Bay's roster, the best punt returner that there would be. And then from a kick returning standpoint, you can still have Nixon back there. You can put Hardman back there. And just a sneaky one to keep an eye on, I think Marshawn Lloyd could have the ability to be a very good kick returner in this league as well. So just another one to kind of keep an eye on there. Tyler, thank you as well for the super chat. I think tight end is more of a need than talked about. Musgrave can't stay healthy or on his feet. I just don't think he's a lock for tight end too, like most say he is. I don't know that I would say need, Tyler, but it's an interesting position. Clearly you have your 1A in Tucker Kraft. Like, he is your number one tight end. At minimum, at worst, I do feel like you feel comfortable with Musgrave as your number two. I don't think that's controversial. I think you feel like he can clearly fill that number two tight end spot. He gives you something a little bit different than Kraft. But to your point, he has been injured. He has not been able to show anything really that has been earth-shaking. That is, when he's been on the field, it's been really tough because last year, we just haven't, he was coming back from injury and he just didn't show anything of any real value. And that's not to say he's not. I think he can be a very valuable player in this offense. We just didn't see it when he came back from injury last year. The hope is that he can stay healthy. The hope is that he can be a really good number two tight end. But to your larger point there, we haven't seen Kraft and Musgrave together almost at all, in large part because one of those guys has been injured. And I think having that second tight end in this offense is important. Furthermore, Ben Sims was given every opportunity to kind of show that, hey, when need be, I can be a number two. Not only did he not do that, he lost that number three position to John Fitzpatrick by the end of that year. And John Fitzpatrick hasn't even been brought back to the team yet. So it maybe goes to show you they don't have maybe a ton of faith in their tight ends besides Musgrave and Kraft. This is a position I do expect them to address in some way. I would expect that they're going to be active in the draft, not probably day one or day two, anything like that. But I would think in day three, they're probably going to take, or at least would like to take, a tight end that could maybe battle for that number two spot, but also be just a better number three. And I think the other thing too, that goes a little bit, I think a little bit under the radar too is just that blocking tight end position. Stephon Diggs visiting with the New England Patriots, by the way. But I do think the kind of interesting aspect here is that blocking tight end. They just don't really have that guy. Ben Sims has been okay. They haven't brought back Fitzpatrick. Clearly Musgrave is not. Kraft is a solid blocker, but he's not like a dominant run blocker. Do they find that blocking tight end? That would be another nice thing to have in this offense. So I don't think it's like this glaring need. In fact, if you told me that they went into the season with Kraft, Musgrave, and Sims, and those three were healthy, I would feel more than fine with that group still. But I would be willing to bet you that they're at least interested probably day 3 of the draft in adding another body to that room. And if they don't, I would think that they would look around and scour the free agent market to see what would be left, to see if they can maybe get some competition for that number 3 position. Appreciate the chat, Tyler. What gives Packers fans hope that next season will be any different with an underwhelming free agency period and most likely moving on from Jair? At least the Hobbs signing was somewhat exciting. Yeah, I actually like the Banks signing more than Hobbs, if I'm being honest. I haven't had the opportunity to do my deep dive on Hobbs yet, but I'll get there. But I actually think Banks is a little bit, and there's a reason that they paid him more than Hobbs as well. So I think Banks is actually a little bit more of the exciting of the two for me. But I think there's a variety of different ways to look at this. Number 1A. Above and beyond anything else, is that I do not believe this offense with the Jordan Love that we saw last year is anything like the real Packers offense. And specifically, I just don't believe that the Jordan Love we saw last year is the real Jordan Love. To me, what we saw from Jordan Love coming, I mean, again, MCL injury, groin injury, the injury down the stretch, like 3 different injuries to Jordan last year. And I didn't see the same Jordan that I saw at the end of 2023. And to be fair, during training camp and prior to the MCL injury, I saw Jordan very similar to what I saw at the end of 2023. Only Jordan knows how much it affected him, how much it was a factor. I think also there's a little bit of a learning curve in year 2. And as a starter, when teams start playing you differently, I think you'll be a year more advanced and have a little bit more knowledge of how teams are attacking him. The biggest thing is if Jordan is better and playing closer to that 2023 version, it changes everything. It completely changed the offense. I mean, I challenge you, go back and watch the end of 2023. And we're not talking like 2 games here. We're talking like an 8-9 game stretch where he was fantastic. I mean, quite easily a top 10 quarterback and at times looking like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. If you get that level of production at quarterback with any level of consistency, it changes everything. And that in and of itself, with everything else just staying status quo, if Banks is a nothing, if Hobbs is a nothing, and everything else just kind of stays as what it is, that propels you from a first-round playoff exit to potentially at least a couple additional playoff wins, sincerely. There's no guarantee that that happens. And I think that this year is a very important and intriguing year for Jordan Love, but that's 1A. If you want any sign of real optimism, it's if Jordan can be the Jordan that we want and we're expecting this past year, that changes the calculus of everything. That makes him from a quarterback that you can win with to a quarterback that you can win because of. And there are very few designations of anything in the NFL that can change your franchise quicker than going from a quarterback that you can win with than a quarterback that you can win because of. And now I think in this season, it is up to Jordan to go out and show that he can be a quarterback that this team wins a Super Bowl because of. So that's number 1. And again, there's no guarantee that that happens, but that would be number 1 on the list. Number 2 is I said going into last year, this is not the benefit of hindsight. This is something I said repeatedly going into last year. I'm curious how expectations changes this team. And I'm curious how they are basically, how do I want to say this? How they handle the human element of a lot of these players in their first and second years in 2023 went out, sort of shocked the world, picked up a huge playoff win in Dallas, and were this close to beating San Francisco in San Francisco. For a very young team, having that success, what happens a lot of times, NBA, Major League Baseball, any professional sports, even college sports, you have that initial success, and what happens is your mind has the ability to go on cruise control a little bit and say, this is pretty easy. Like, we've got this. We're like this close away from being able to compete for a championship. And maybe you don't work quite as hard as you did the year before. You already know what you're doing. And that little small, just taking your foot off the gas a little bit that lack of urgency that Brian Gutekunst talked about, that he was specifically talking about this thing. Like, hey, it's time. You're not a young team anymore. The time is now. It is time to get urgent. It is time to start winning championships. That's what he's talking about. There's a complacency that can take place once you've had a little bit of that taste of success of like, oh, this is easy. We don't have to, work quite as hard. When you forget that you worked incredibly hard to get to that point in the first place, you think that work is done. It's not. It takes even more work to take that next step. So a young team maybe taking their medicine a little bit last year and learning from some of those mistakes and actually having that desire and urgency again that they kind of showed 2 years ago, I think could take it where last year, if we're going right down the list of how many people exceeded expectations, met expectations, and were below expectations, there were far too many of those players that were below expectations. If that switches, where you get the majority of your team at or above expectations, and I'm not asking here for these huge jumps from players. I'm not asking anyone to take a leap from a, average player to an all-pro. I'm not asking for anything crazy here. I'm just saying, can we see the best version of Kenny Clark? Can we see the best version of Rashawn Gary? Can LVN take a jump to be I'm not saying unbelievable defender, but a good pass rusher, like a solid, average, good pass rusher, whatever it is, something better than what he's been so far. Devontae Wyatt, we've seen signs of it. Can he be the best version of himself? We saw a couple games last year of Quay Walker, where Quay Walker looked like, holy crap, what the heck was that? Like that, give me that Quay Walker consistently, because if he shows up, there's like a 3-week stretch. Like if you get 16 games of that, we're talking Pro Bowl Quay Walker at that point. Edgerrin Cooper, stud, right? Like I want to see that. I can't see a step back in year 2 of Edgerrin Cooper like we saw a step back from year 2 from a lot of the players last year. We can go on and on. Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. Like there's a lot of these players. Can we actually see Marshawn Lloyd out on the field? Luke Musgrave. Can Tucker Kraft continue to evolve into that big time player? And what we said going into 2024 is like, hey, there's all of this young, super talented players. You don't need, all 15, 20, 25 of them to take a huge step, but like, can 1 or 2 of them take a pretty significant step? And outside of maybe Tucker Kraft, there wasn't really that jump. Do we see it this year? Can we see 2 or 3 of these guys maybe take that jump and the other ones at least play to expectations? And you start doing that. This is a team that it doesn't take 1 or 2 of these guys playing a lot better. It takes the players that are already on this team playing to the level of their ability and their expectations, just hitting that, just kind of doing their 111th. And you're all of a sudden going to see a team play with a much greater level of consistency down in and down out. You add in a Aaron Banks, you add in a Hobbs as a defensive back, and you add in you add in the fact that you're not losing anything from this team that it really had over the last 2 years when they've been successful. Christian Watson, the one caveat to that, where he's going to miss a pretty significant period of time. But outside of that, you lost Josh Myers, by all accounts, and basically the way the league viewed him as well, the weak link on that offense. You're taking that and that weak link and you're putting in Aaron Banks in his place, not apples to apples positionally, but you get my point. That to me has the ability to be a big upgrade. And you are taking, a defensive backfield that Eric Stokes was the weakest link on defense, in my opinion. And you're taking a good corner in Nate Hobbs and putting him in his place. And when you continue to have a team that has just those little incremental signs of growth, you'd be shocked at how quickly it can take those steps in the right direction. It is worth saying that is a glass half full approach, right? But your question here was, what are the signs of optimism? How can it be better? Those are the ways that it can be better. And it is up to Matt LaFleur. It is up to Brian Gutekunst in this draft. And most importantly, it is up to the players on this team. I said going into free agency, regardless of what they did, right? Even if they went out and got your 2 favorite free agents, even if they got DK Metcalf and Josh Sweat or whoever it might be, right? The biggest opportunity for growth on this team isn't signing Josh Sweat and going out and getting DK Metcalf. The biggest opportunity for growth is the 30 to 35 players who are returning on this team that are young and super talented and need to play up to their level of ability, their level of competence, and what they've already shown that they can do, just getting there, or maybe even a smidge higher, right? If they can show that growth, that's how this team gets supercharged. And I know we always want that to happen overnight and it, go from one year to the next and that growth just takes place. It's not always linear. And sometimes it takes that 1 step back in order to take 2 steps forward. There's no guarantee that happens. I think this is a team that quite frankly could finish first in the division and be a pretty special team with a small step backwards in the other direction. If we see the same thing that happened in 2024 happen in 2025 and another small regression from 15, 20 players on the team, I think they could finish fourth in the division. They were 1-5 against the North last year. You also look at the opportunities in those games outside of maybe, the playoff game against the Eagles and things like that, right? The Detroit game, they lost in Detroit. You're a possession away one way or the other. I mean, that game was going to come down to whoever had the ball last. Easily could have won that game. Could have won the game in Brazil against Philly. Easily could have won that game against Chicago at the end of the year, especially if Jordan doesn't get hurt, etc. Easily could have lost that game against Chicago and gone 0-6 in the division. This is a league where you're 2 or 3 plays away in just about any game from flipping the script from a win to a loss or a loss to a win. So Green Bay takes that right step forward. You go from, what do they have? 5 losses last year? I already forgot like the actual win-loss record. 5 or 6 losses, 5, and then 6 in the playoffs, right? It's crazy how quickly you forget. I'm so focused on they were 11-6, so they lost 7 games. But you take those 7 losses and all of a sudden becomes 4 losses. You go a small step in the opposite direction, and those 6 losses become 7, 8, 9 losses. That's the difference in the NFL, especially when you're a team right around where Green Bay is. So I think you need a big draft. I think you need some improvement from within. I think Jordan is the biggest asterisk in this equation, or the biggest, lottery ticket, mystery box, whatever you want to call it. But there are opportunities for this team to succeed in a major way, but it's going to take everyone in the organization, from Goody hitting on maybe some value free agents and some draft picks, to Matt LaFleur, Rich Bisaccia, Adam Stenovich, and Jeff Hafley, coaching their minds out to get these players playing to the level that they should be playing at. And then, of course, the players themselves taking the accountability and that urgency and playing at the level that they're capable of playing at. So that's your pathway to success. Whether they do it or not, that's what Vegas is for. You go make your bets wherever you want. But that's what makes the NFL fun. And it also is what is frustrating at times of like, oh, it's over. This team sucks. Or, and it can happen too on the opposite side of like, yep, this team's winning the championship. Like the margin is razor thin. And Green Bay is in that sort of Mendoza line area where, like, again, with a small step in the right direction, they're a Super Bowl competitor, and a small step in the opposite direction, and they're out of the playoffs. Like, that's what makes the NFL fun. That's why I get more excited about this stuff, and think that even when you don't maybe add that all-pro player or whatever, these small incremental increases or improvements can improve your team. And you look at somebody like Detroit, where, yeah, they got in DJ Reed, but they lost Carlton Davis. They lost their guard from Wisconsin, whose name is avoiding me at the moment. But yeah, you get my point. Like, there's some losses that they had there too. Green Bay's losses, you can make a strong argument, are Kevin Zeitler, by the way, are additions by subtraction. And I think that has the ability to be a win for Green Bay as well. That's now the fun part. We get to go and watch it. Sorry for the long-winded response, but great question, Luke. The Aggressiver UFO. I think that's proper grammar, Aggressiver UFO, but I like the name. Herman, I want Grant and Cam Jackson, that's 700 pounds in the middle of that defense, and add on Gary and LVN and JT from Ohio State. All they get edge. They all get off the ball fast and are disruptors. Listen, add as much to the defensive line as you want. That's been the most disappointing aspect of this offseason. We can talk about some positives. That's the biggest negative. The fact that I think for the most part, kind of agreed that pass rush was the 1A need for this team. If not 1A, certainly, pretty close second. I certainly put it at 1A. And the fact that there's been no addition whatsoever, and the only thing that has happened is you've lost TJ Slayton. Not that he's an epic pass rusher by any means, but still the only thing that you've done on the defensive front is lose somebody. That's by far and away the biggest disappointment so far of the offseason for me. So adding as much depth, versatility, talent to that defensive line as you want via the draft, sign me the hell up. I am absolutely all for it. Top 30 visit with Shamar Stewart, who seems pretty much like a copy and paste of Rashawn Gary. High RAS, low production project. Just tell me we won't do this. Seems easy. Grant Hardman or a trade. If Shamar Stewart is on the clock, and I'll preface this by saying I have not turned on the all 22 of Shamar Stewart yet, but everything that I'm hearing, if Shamar Stewart's there at 23, of course he was visiting Green Bay today, I'd be pretty stunned if Goody does not take Shamar Stewart. I also, from what I've heard, the production doesn't tell the whole story with Shamar Stewart. I think there's a better chance that he's gone at 23, again, based on what I'm hearing, than that he's there at 23. But I'll very, very clearly break down Shamar Stewart in a very aggressive way coming up in the near future. And I'll let you know whether that would be a good thing or a bad thing. Not that you have to listen to me by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll let you know my thoughts on it once I watch him in better detail. And by the way, so next week, I'm going to be traveling in Florida. I'm starting to record some episodes in advance. We're going to have awesome guests. I talked to Carmen Vitale today. That'll be an episode that airs next week. I'm going to be talking to Sam Munson. I'm going to be talking to Aaron Nagler. I'm going to be talking to Peter Bukowski. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be talking to Ben Fennell as well. So there'll be about 5-ish days of special guests that I've had talked to in advance, and some really fun episodes for you guys while I'm out of town. But outside of obviously spending some really awesome quality time with the fam, I'm going to be spending a lot of my nights when everyone else is in bed in Florida by probably 9 p.m. From probably 9 until 1 every night. I'm going to be just because I'm not going to have anything to do because all the episodes will be done. I'm going to be probably cramming quite a few draft prospects in during that time. So if you can tell the smile from ear to ear, not only the vacation, the warm weather, the family time, but some hardcore draft nerdy time as well, I am very much grinning ear to ear for the opportunity for that. Woohoo, we got Mecole, the guy won the Super Bowl. We're going to win it. John, I love the optimism. What makes a corner better fit for cover 2 versus cover 3 versus quarters? All right. You asked this question yesterday and I didn't have time to get to it at the end. I'll do my best. There's different skill sets, obviously, for each. I think the big thing that you need to remember here is you want corners that can play a variety of everything. This is no longer a world that you live in where it's like the Seattle Seahawks who can just keep running cover 3 over and over and over because they have the right pieces for a cover 3, right? So a variety of different things to think about here. So if you're a team that runs a lot of man-to-man coverage, right, you're going to need those pure man-to-man coverage skills. Change of direction is going to be a big one. You usually want some physicality at the line of scrimmage. You want great ball skills because you're going to get balls thrown your way and you're going to be in contested catch situations. So you want to make sure you're not a corner that's not getting their head turned and is just getting super grabby and panicky at the point of attack. So, and you want some probably size and strength as well, because again, you're going to want to be able to press guys at the line of scrimmage if you're playing some man-to-man coverage, because you don't want them getting out in their route as much as possible. Now, you can play off man, you can play press man. There's a variety of different ways to do it. You can play trail technique. And that's the other thing that I should mention here too. There's nuance in all of this, and you can kind of find ways to do it. But those are some traits that are really important in man-to-man. In cover 2, think of it this way, right? So cover 2, you're backpedaling and you're usually staying in that front zone, right? So the one thing that's really important in a cover 2 corner is you want really, strong tacklers, because those guys are staying up top. If there's anything in front, any crossers, like you're going to kind of be the first to the ball on the outside. So you want some good, run and tackle ability from those guys. A lot of times some good size is important there too, because again, there's going to be that zone behind you, right? So we always talk about the cover 2 turkey hole, or as Gruden called it, the turkey hole. You've got that gap in between the safeties and the corners in those, those little, kind of routes that you can get in that turkey hole shot there. So, so kind of those like long corner routes. You have to, if you have a little bit more size and some wingspan, it makes it tougher to get over the top of that corner to make that throw, because now you've got a big 6'2", 6'3" corner with a massive arm length on the outside that they have the ability to maybe get up and tip some of those plays. And then you want somebody with ball skills as well, because now you're playing in zone more. So you've got eyes on the quarterback, and they can maybe, again, especially if you're in cover 2, you start reading a quarterback's eyes. You see that maybe they're not going to get to your zone. Sometimes you can make that zone over and maybe go make a play that way. So vision and ball skills are going to be some really important traits in a cover 2. Cover 3 and cover 4 corners on the outside, at least, are a little bit more similar in the fact that you're going to be, going backwards. You're going to kind of be playing off coverage. Again, you want good vision on the quarterback. A little bit more size can help, but you want great backpedal. You want the ability to kind of click and close. So what that means is if you're backpedaling back and they throw underneath, you immediately can make that read and then make that transition from backwards to forwards really, really quick. So you're clicking and then you're closing to the ball. You want that ability as a cover 3, cover 4 corner. And then, just smooth back pedal, really good change of direction. So the ability to kind of flip your hips sometimes, even though you'd like some of the size, those taller corners, and this goes for man-to-man as well, don't have the change of direction and agility in their hips to kind of run sometimes with those wide receivers. So the ability to kind of flip your hips and run and not lose speed while doing so is very, very important. And then ball skill is going to be super important as well. You're going to get some contested catch opportunities in those situations. So you got to be able to, again, not panic, get your head around when your head is turned, and make sure that you can bat away some of those passes without getting some pass interference calls. So there's more to it that I'm sure I'm not hitting off the top of my head, but just off the top of my head, those are definitely some different traits that you want, depending on if you're playing man 2, 3, 4, cover 6, etc. But it's, again, worth noting the biggest thing here is you can't just be a cover 2 or a cover 3 or a cover 4 guy. Your defense might play predominantly, 60% of a certain defense, maybe, but still, it's not like you can be bad at the other stuff 40% of the time. So your defense could change in any given game. You might play a lot of cover 3 or cover 4 against one team. The next time you play against a team, you might play a lot more cover 2 or man. So it's really important that you have the versatility to play in a variety of those different schemes. So great question, but definitely worth noting. You often say that there are 2 ways to build winners: a team full of good players and a team carried by a few superstars. Which is easier on the salary cap? Neither. You have to have, if you build a team of good players, you have to have a lot of them, right? You can't have any holes on your roster, and you still kind of need like at least 1 or 2. I mean, maybe not to the level of like Mahomes, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce or whatever, or Tyreek Hill, but you need at least a couple guys that are carrying you to some extent. And then you just can't have any real gaps anywhere. So you need to hit on your draft picks. You need to hit on your big time signings. You need to hit on your value signings. Like, you kind of need to hit everywhere, and you can't go cheap on that when doing so. And you better make sure that those gaps are filled, because again, you don't have the superstars to carry you. So you can't have the weaknesses. If you have the weaknesses, they're going to get exposed. You better be good just about everywhere. The other one, it just depends, right? Because again, you need those superstars to carry you. Those superstars are going to be a very expensive thing to kind of keep on your roster. However, you're going to need some good players to go along with it. So even when you have those superstars in KC, you're still paying some of your other guys, right? Like a Joe Tooney and obviously now like a Trey Smith, and maybe you put them in the superstar category, but you get my point. There's going to be other players that you have to pay to kind of keep that thing together and going. And then, of course, you can get away with maybe a few more value players if you've got 3 guys that can really carry you, 4 guys who can really carry you. But again, those 4 are going to be very cost expensive against the cap. So I guess I wouldn't really look at it that way, John, of like, what's the better way to build it from a cap standpoint? What's the better way to build it from a team standpoint? You're going to spend your money one way or the other far more often than not. So spend it wisely, fill as many of those gaps as you can, and try to get those superstar players in the meantime, because those are usually the ones that are going to propel you into that Super Bowl status. Thank you for calling out the Packer fans that are hating on the Hardman signing. The market is dry, and trying to sign a primary punt returner and kick returner is a smart move. Listen, I'm never going to hate on any sort of fans, right? Like, we all do this for some level of fun or escape. For some people, a little bit more negativity in that is their way of escaping and being a fan. It's not my cup of tea. I quite frankly can't stand it. I don't know how you do it, but that doesn't mean that my way is right and your way is wrong. You can fan the way that you want to fan, and you can escape the way that you want to escape. Again, personally, I can't. The football and sports for me is the escape from all the other crap that's going on, right? So all the other negativity and whatever you want to view it as, this is the fun part of it. The things that we can just kind of take all the other crap and try to ignore it as best as possible and just focus on football and sports and the Packers. And that stuff should be fun. And just being angry and wanting to fire everyone, and it just feels like the lowest common denominator at times. And it feels just, I don't know, for me, that doesn't sound fun, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. So I'm not hating on you. It's frustrating to me at times where I just see the negativity, like, and it's not to say that Goody is perfect. It's not to say Matt's perfect. And I try my best to call out the things. And I think I would consider myself a little bit more of an optimist when it comes to this stuff in general. But I think in that same realm, when I do call out and say, holy crap, the 2021 draft was beyond awful, or when I do say, hey, you know what? I think Eric Stokes has been the weakest link on the defense, or Josh Myers is the weakest link on the offense. If I was just, happy-go-lucky about everything of like, yeah, Josh Myers is, maybe he is playing the best football of his career. You know what? Eric Stokes deserves a little bit more time. He was a first-round pick. There's a lot of talent there and whatever. I try to be as transparent as possible and just give you what I am seeing with probably a slight lens of optimism in that if I'm being transparent about it. But I don't fully understand the constant negativity towards it. But to just correct what you're saying, not hating on it, struggle to understand it, wish it wasn't necessarily that way at times. But you do you fan the way that you want to fan. And if that's your escape from your day to day, that you just need to get some anger and frustration out and you want to levy it on, players or coaches, I guess you do you. But yeah, not hating, just sometimes very confused, and it can be frustrating at times to see that negativity just because I see it in like weird ways too. Like, and it's not just, towards the Packers too. It's just, you see it in a variety of different ways. And I get that this space is, open for that, right? Like it comes with the territory. I don't get to just be like, not everything coming my way is going to be positive, whether that's about me, whether it's about the Packers, whether that's any of that stuff. But, yeah, sometimes it just happens in very weird ways and you see it in a lot of confusing ways. And sometimes it just is what it is. But again, you fan the way that you want to fan. And yes, I think that the Hardman signing, when taken under consideration of what it is as a value signing, makes all the sense in the world. I think there's a good chance he doesn't even make the team. And then I saw people upset with that of like, clearly he's going to be the number 4 wide receiver. Maybe he does. But I think if you're asking me if he's closer to not making the team or closer to making a huge impact on the team, I think he's probably closer to not making it. But we'll see what that salary says and that signing bonus says when that comes out, what level of guarantees he gets. And that'll tell us the whole story. Then we won't have to guess, right? We'll know based on his signing bonus and guarantees whether or not he's a player that's a made man and is going to make the 53, or if he's going to have to earn his way on in training camp. So we'll talk about that when it happens. By the way, not hating on the Hardman signing, probably a solid move, but not likely to make or break. John, we're in the same boat there. Is it just me, or is it a good year to grab a high-quality backup quarterback in day 3? Would it be weird to grab a guy like Milroe or Ewers or someone if they fall? Someone no one is considering that. I don't think it was a follow-up to that, but no, I've talked about this a lot. In fact, I would expect them to try to take a quarterback on day 3. A couple different reasons. I think it's very clear they're not sold on Sean Clifford. This is another thing I got not yelled at, but like, why am I hating on Sean Clifford? Why am I hating on Sean Clifford? All I'm saying is that the Packers cut him last year and had no intentions of keeping him on the team other than the practice squad. And there's probably not a future for Sean Clifford on this team in any real way, unless he takes some sort of crazy jump. That's all I'm saying. But I think you want competition there for Clifford at the minimum. And in an ideal world, you would find a quarterback now who can be your backup in 2026. So I think that's an important aspect of this as well. You don't necessarily like, I think in the likely world of 2026, Malik Willis is probably not here, right? He's probably with another team. So in that capacity, you probably want a new backup ready to go. So if you can find the right guy in day 3, I think it would make all the sense in the world. Somebody who could be your number 3 this year and then hopefully be your backup in 2026. All right, I'm going to get to these super chats really quick. Remind me, I'm at 7:02 p.m. on the chat. Let's see. Most State of Minnesotan, thank you so much for the 5 gifted memberships. Appreciate that a ton. You are always a legend for doing that. Sergio, so much for urgency every once in a while. If you know you have a need, go aggressively every year. We say we're right there, and then it's another need, wide receiver, defensive end, corner. Seems to always be our issue. The urgency thing, first of all, was not about adding players to the team. Urgency was about the people that were at 1265 already that need to take their foot and put it heavily on the gas pedal and say, it is time for everyone in this organization to have the urgency to go win a Super Bowl. Now, if Brian Gutekunst says that to everyone in the organization of, hey, it's time to have urgency, and then sits on his hands in free agency, and like if McCole Hardman was his big free agent signing and he goes draft and develop in the draft again, well, it's great that you talked to everyone else about urgency. You didn't back it up on your own. So he was not talking about going in aggressively getting players or anything like that. He was talking about the people already at 1265, just to put that and make that abundantly clear. My feel is that if you're going to say that, you need to back it up. In my opinion, he has backed it up. You may not like the signings. I may not love the signings. Your mileage may vary on what they did by spending $150 million. By going out and spending $150 million, he made an aggressive maneuver to improve this team. I'll say it one more time. You may wish that the $150 million went towards a Josh Sweat, went towards a DK Metcalf, and you're willing to give up that second round pick, went towards insert whatever free agent you would like onto this team. You may wish that that money was spent differently. That's why Goody's in the job and we are not. As he says, the best way to spend that money, or the way that he could spend the money and improve the team with players that were actually available to him, because maybe Sweat was going to go to Arizona and Jonathan Gannon, his former defensive coordinator, no matter what. Maybe, maybe they reached out to DK and his agent and they said, no, we do not want to go to Green Bay. We will hold out. We're not going to sign an extension in Green Bay. You can trade a second round pick. We'll play for the 1 year, but then we're gone, or you're going to have to franchise tag them. I'm not saying either of those things happen. They probably could have got DK for the same ish price. Probably would have had to beat out Pittsburgh a little bit since Pittsburgh's pick was ahead of Green Bay. They probably could have been in the Josh Sweat conversations, but we don't know exactly what they had available. What Brian Gutekunst thought was the best way to improve this team with what was available to him was Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs. That was a significant investment. He spent a huge chunk of money. If you would have said, by the way, just go back 2 weeks, if you would have said Green Bay went out and gave a 4-year, $48 million deal and a 4-year, $77 million deal, you would have been like, oh, hell yeah. Goody went and did it. And then like a value free agent signing in Hardman. And go back like probably 2 months. I said all throughout the offseason, when people asked, what are they going to do in free agency? I said they're probably going to make one big move on defense like they did last year with Xavier McKinney, one big move on offense like they did with Josh Jacobs, and probably a value free agent signing or two. Their move on defense, 4 years, 48, Nate Hobbs. Their 4 years, 77 on offense was Aaron Banks. And their value free agent so far has been Mecole Hardman. About what they were going to spend and what was available to them, he has gone out and he's done. How you feel about those players is totally your prerogative. And what those players can go out and do is going to be up to them and to Goody to show that his money was wisely spent. If there's anything that Goody deserves the benefit of the doubt on, it is probably his pro personnel side, and it's probably his ability to go and acquire free agents that can go out and play at a pretty high level. Outside of Jimmy Graham, maybe like a Muhammad Wilkerson who got hurt right away, and a couple small things like Funchess and Watkins, like he's done a really, really good job in free agency, especially with his big free agent signings. So if there's anyone who probably deserves the benefit of the doubt, or if there's anything that he deserves the benefit of the doubt on, it is that. So you may not like the fact that those were the two players that he used his urgency money on, but he used his urgency money. That's what he had to spend. And it's not to say he couldn't have done something more. It's not to say that they couldn't go out and get a Travon Walker or maybe still trade for a Trey Hendrickson if that came to fruition. There's still levers that they can pull, but this was always about the expected outcome of right around a 77, 4 years 77, 4 years 48. I would have said, yep, that sounds exactly about right. And that's what we talked about. One big signing on offense, one big signing on defense. So I disagree with the fact that he did not show urgency. He did. You just might not like how he used it. You might not like the players. And I'll just add on one more thing kind of on top of that is you say you're right there and now we need a wide receiver, defensive end, corner. I've talked about this quite a bit already, but Adams wasn't going to come to Green Bay when that contract was out there for the Rams. Like that was his ideal perfect contract. It's exactly what he wanted. You weren't going to get him in Green Bay. You weren't going to get him off that deal. He got the exact thing he wanted with that deal with the Rams. It wasn't going to happen. And I can totally understand why he didn't want to give $30 million per year and a second round pick for DK Metcalf. You may have been willing to do that. And I wouldn't have hated it if you would have said he gave up, $30 million per year on a 5-year contract and a second round pick for DK Metcalf. I'd have been like, let's go. Let's see what he can do in this offense. But I can very clearly understand why he didn't want to necessarily go in that direction. Defensive ends, again, Josh Sweat, Dio Denigbo, those were kind of the main ones. Joey Bosa on a 1-year 12. I don't want Joey. I wouldn't have wanted Joey Bosa on a 112. A Denigbo would have been fine. I would have been fine with 3 years, 48, but that would have been a pretty hefty price for a player who has not played up to that level so far in his career. That would have been, for the people who don't like the players that are maybe a little bit more on the prospect side than the production side, this would be one that you're hoping he can hit that level by giving him a 3 or $48 million deal. It's not what he's done so far. I think people maybe would have been upset by that as well. And then again, we don't know what level of interest they had in Sweat, or if Sweat was interested in them. We don't know what the two-way street was there. So in an ideal world, yeah, I'm pissed too that they don't have a better pass rush than they did going into the offseason. I also would have loved another top flight wide receiver for this team. I think you can also look at the market and the way that it played out and say, I can understand why it didn't end up with a big time pass rusher or wide receiver in free agency or in the offseason, because those things just really didn't come to fruition and fall Green Bay's way. And so now you have to go about building the team in a different way. They also needed a defensive back, and they go out and get Nate Hobbs. Offensive line for me was number 3 on my list, ahead of wide receiver, I might add, on my offseason shopping list. I had offensive line ahead of wide receiver. And they, I guess, did too, because they go out and spend it on Aaron Banks. I don't know that I would have done 4 years, 77 for Aaron Banks, but I think he can be a pretty significant upgrade from Josh Myers. So I disagree with the idea that there wasn't urgency there, but I'm understanding and totally get if you're slightly underwhelmed by the way that it was utilized. So that's how I would define that. Again, agree to disagree. That's totally fine. Really can't wait to see Jordan next year. Go Pack Go. I think it is one of the, I'll just say this. I think the quarterback position in the NFC North is one of the most intriguing storylines in all of football. Jared Goff, you sort of know what you're getting there, but Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Jordan Love, those three and who they are in 2025 is going to go a really long way in defining this division and potentially even defining the NFC for some time, right? If you get 3 really, really good quarterbacks there to go along with Jared Goff, man, it's going to be a really crazy division for probably the foreseeable future. If 1 or 2 hit and another does not, well, the team that it doesn't hit is going to be put pretty behind the 8 ball for the foreseeable future. And again, maybe they're all just good but not great quarterbacks, so that's fine. Like Jared Goff's kind of in that area as well, though he's been playing really, really well as of late. But it makes that division very, very tight and congested, and when your quarterbacks are all kind of in that same realm. So I think the Jordan Love, JJ McCarthy, Caleb Williams 2025 is one of the more interesting storylines in any division in all of football this year. All right. Mike, member for 11 months. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for all the positivity, Andy. Most fan bases are like this. And like you say, people can fan how they want to fan. I'm hypercritical, but I wait for something to happen before critiquing. You do you, Mike. I love that. I appreciate you being a member for 11 months. And again, I'm never going to hate on how people fan. They can do it as any way that they want. Sometimes for me, it just gets a little confusing at times, but that's okay. We move on. Bradley McCoy starting to feel like Ja will stay. I still don't believe that, but I'm going to play devil's advocate tomorrow. I said this yesterday. I didn't think we were going to get a Hardman signing, so ended up doing the Hardman signing this morning. But my goal here tonight is to do an episode on why Ja should and or could stay and sort of the case for keeping Jair Alexander. So you can look forward to that episode tomorrow, assuming we don't get any breaking Packers news before the end of the night. I remember you and Justice agreeing we needed 2 great players to take us over the top. Still the draft and the rest of the offseason, but what's your stance if this team stagnates or regresses this season? I don't want to think about that, Preston, first of all. Clearly, some of that greatness is going to have to come from within. They're going to need Jordan Love or I think Edgerrin Cooper is a great example of one. Tucker Kraft. Like you can see a world in which Edgerrin Cooper, Tucker Kraft, Jordan Love become great players at their respective positions. I think that's, again, I'm not saying it's necessarily the most likely outcome in the world, but you can easily see a world in which that exists. I think there are other players as well. Like it wouldn't surprise me if Evan Williams became a Pro Bowl player. Wouldn't surprise me, if somebody along that defensive line took a jump. Wouldn't surprise me if Zach Tom took even another step in becoming a elite offensive lineman in this league. I think Marshawn Lloyd still has a ton of talent. I'm excited for him. We've seen wide receivers take jumps in year 3 in the past. And of course, they have a full draft ahead of them as well. And they could end up with another Edgerrin Cooper this year or something like that. So I think there are those players out there that could take this team to the next level. But it looks more and more like that greatness is going to have to kind of come from within, which is fine. You've got a lot of young, talented players to hopefully take on that mantle. But if they do stagnate, if things do not get better, if things get worse, then it changes the trajectory of this team. You're going to have to look at, because the salary cap, they're not going to have probably quite the space next year in free agency. You're going to have to look now, how bad did it go? Did they have an early draft pick? Did things go really aggressively bad where you're talking like 5-12 bad? Because that really changes some things. If it's more like 8-9 bad, massively disappointing, but maybe you saw some things on the roster. Maybe there were a couple injuries that explained it away, whatever, but you could maybe figure out a way to maybe improve the team or make some adjustments that would maybe get them back on that playoff side of things. But there's a lot of reasons why I think this season is very important for Green Bay. is this sort of 10-7, 11-6 first round exit just who they are? Is, or maybe one playoff win and an exit who they are? Is that the ceiling for this team? And if so, then they're going to have to figure out anything that they can do to take that next step, because otherwise they're just going to stagnate, and that is who they are. If they take that next step forward and we see some really positive signs of development from this team, then look the hell out. Then the arrow is very strictly pointing back up, right? And that would be very exciting for this team. If it goes in the opposite direction, like I said, that step gets taken back and this becomes a, 7-10 team, there's going to be some questions asked. A lot of questions asked. 6-11, even worse, right? So again, barring maybe Jordan Love or some significant injuries that explain that reason why, there are going to have to be some explanations as to why that happened, and some real soul searching within the organization as to why that massive step back took place. So don't think it's going to get to that point. Really don't even want to think about it getting to that point. But I think that it, like, there is sort of this pendulum right now swinging with this team, and it could go in a very positive direction. Like I said, a couple steps backwards in a few key areas, and it could swing in the opposite direction where you have to sort of reevaluate some things and feel like, hey, are we on the right path or not? And do we need to take a couple steps back before we can take a couple steps forward again? This is a very important and an interesting and intriguing season for the Packers for that very reason. Shiv, thanks so much for becoming a YouTube member. You're the best. Sergeant Dan, the morning of free agency was as exciting as Christmas morning to me. Then we saw everyone get their Red Ryder BB guns, and we got the pink bunny onesie. I don't think it's that bad, Dan. I think, I don't know. I can't think of any other gifts. Maybe it was a little blimp under the tree that the other kid got or something. You didn't get your Red Ryder BB gun, but like there was still a couple nice presents under the tree. Wasn't quite what you were expecting, right? It's not one of those Christmases where maybe you remember it as like, oh, I didn't get anything that I wanted and that Christmas was ruined. But it was one of those that you maybe just, kind of forget over time. Where it's like you're going to remember the Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs offseason, right? You're going to remember the offseason where they went out and got Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, Adrian Amos, and Billy Turner. You're going to remember the Charles Woodson. You're going to remember the Reggie White. You're going to remember the Sean Jones and Santana Dotson and et cetera, all the players that they brought in that year. Like, you're going to remember some of those as like the ones where it was like a real true just celebration of what you got under the tree. I think this is one that you don't necessarily look back at and be like, ugh, remember that year he got us Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs? Ugh. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be maybe just a little bit less of a memorable one. I'll put it that way. So not quite a pink bunny onesie, but maybe just a little bit less than you were expecting. It's like you wanted the Red Ryder BB gun and they're like, you'll shoot your eye out, kid, but here's a squirt gun. Hey, it's like, look at you, it's kind of the same thing, right? You said you wanted a nice player on offense, a nice player on defense. You didn't quite get the creme de la creme, but it's kind of the same. So it's more of like a squirt gun when you were hoping for a BB gun. I'll put it that way, Sergeant Dan. Mike McGee, living in Green Bay is a factor in acquiring players. Chase just said today that Cincinnati has terrible food and there's only football to worry about while there. Some players want LA, Miami, New York, etc. Yes, but some players like the idea of just focusing on football too, and the nice, quaint little situation that is in Green Bay, and being able to kind of focus on what you want to focus on. I think Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs are phenomenal examples of that. They're football dudes through and through. They will love being in this sort of situation. You're not exactly in Green Bay all year round, so you can kind of go back to your hometown wherever you want to go in the off season. And there's advantages there as well. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. We've come a long way from the barren wasteland that was Green Bay, where nobody wanted to play here. You can figure out ways to make it work. And I think if you were in that situation where people just did not want to come to Green Bay, Goody would just have to sort of switch up the philosophy a little bit and probably be more willing to trade for players, because then there's less of a say, right? So I think he feels comfortable with players he can get to Green Bay. And I don't think in his tenure, I mean, he's got Jimmy Graham here, Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs. There have been some pretty high-end signings. Even, whether, again, what you ever think of Aaron Banks, it's a big signing. Like, they've been able to find the players that they've wanted to find for the most part. I think it plays a factor, but I don't think it's anywhere near the burden that maybe it once was prior to kind of Ron Wolf taking over and rewriting the ship in Green Bay. Kyle, thank you so much for that super chat. And sorry if you had to double click to get your question in, but I appreciate it a ton. Settle a bet. Do the Packers specifically use RAS when evaluating draft prospects players, or do they use something that is similar and closely resembles RAS, maybe their own formula? I would be willing to bet you a significant amount of money that they do not use relative athletic score directly, that they have their own athletic metrics. I don't know if they have like an equation that they use or an algorithm or a formula or anything like that. I know that they care about specific height, weight, speed thresholds. They seem to care about the 3-cone and the agility drills in some certain positions, certainly height, weight at some certain positions. So just know that they want high-end athletes. And it just so happens that relative athletic score does a really nice job of painting a beautiful picture of who the most athletic players are. And if Green Bay just told you, right, that they like players with height and weight, right? Like with some bulk to them, usually at almost all the positions. Like they don't want to go short at corner. They don't want to go undersized at defensive end. They don't like going undersized at offensive line. Like they like bulk to their players and some height as well. And they love high-end athletes. Relative athletic score is literally made for that. So they had that vision before relative athletic score even existed. If you went back and looked at, some of their profiles, I mean, it's a little bit tough because Raz came around right when sort of Goody took over, and there was definitely a little bit of a shift in the sort of athletes that, Goody kind of wanted for this team. But literally, if Goody just said, I want height, weight, speed, and high-end athletes, like relative athletic score would literally like output that for you. But no, I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that they actually use relative athletic scores. I think they, again, either have their own formula or their own number, or are just in general looking for height, weight, speed, high-end athleticism. And it just so happens that RAS actually shows you that output in a very nice way. And so Green Bay ends up with a lot of high RAS athletes. I think that's more just because that's what that's showing you, and that's what Green Bay likes. So no, I don't think they actually use it. Long story short, I said 702 is where I left off, right? Let's see. All right. Dawson, love your stuff, man. Ignore the haters. You're amazing at what you do. Listen to it every day and makes every day better. Appreciate the content. Dawson, I appreciate that a ton. Like I said, all the hater stuff, it comes with the territory. Can grind at times, but I still sleep at night, so it's all good. And I appreciate all the support and the love and the kindness and the likes and the views and all that stuff far, far, far outweighs any of the negativity that comes with it. So I appreciate it. And I thank you so much for being here and just checking it out. That is what everything's about. If you would have told me a few years ago, again, I did this writing for Scotty Sports when 3 or 4 people were reading the stuff that I was putting out every day. So the fact that there's any sort of following for it is beyond amazing. And I can take the bad with the good. That's for sure. How confident do you feel in Nixon being our more than likely number 1 outside corner this season? Can't say I love it as of now, but I'm more than happy to be proven incorrect. I think this is an interesting question. And I think there's a couple ways to look at this, especially if you want to spin it in a positive direction. I think the first of all is like, there's no number 1 corner anymore. Green Bay primarily plays corners on their sides. You're going to have 2 guys that are out on the field at all times. You're probably going to see a lot of Nate Hobbs and a lot of Keyshawn Nixon, and those guys are going to be out on the field a ton. So whoever you want to label 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter anymore. The other thing that I would say is, from what we saw from Jeff Hafley last year, this is a very zone-based defense. And I think if you kind of look at it, and I get, Stingley just got paid a ton, but so what was the top of the market? Travarius Ward got a pretty big deal. Carlton Davis got a decent deal. DJ Reed got a deal, but you're not looking at like $25 million players. You can find ways in zone defenses to win with good, but maybe not great corners. And I'm not saying it can always be that way. And I'm not saying that you don't always want to improve at those positions either, but you're now not defending a man as much as you're defending space with all the zone coverage that you're doing. So again, we talked about earlier some of the traits that you're looking for. You better be able to communicate incredibly well. You better be able to disguise incredibly well. And 2 things that we saw this Green Bay defense, and you better be able to tackle. And 3 things that we saw this defense improve upon a ton with Jeff Hafley last year was communication on the back end, tackling ability, run defense, and just, again, rallying and tackling at the football, whether there was a completion or whatever. And then just kind of vision to the football. What was the other thing I said? Rallying and tackling, communication, and I already forgot what I said. But again, I think what we saw from the improvement of this Jeff Hafley defense is all of that. And we saw it in abundance, and you can kind of get away again a little bit with maybe playing space a little bit more than playing specifically, again, man-to-man coverage and those sort of things. So I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that, I feel super awesome if Hobbs and Valentine and Nixon are your top 3 corners. But we saw Green Bay be a top 10 defense with primarily Valentine and Nixon and Bullard be their 3 top guys at corner a season ago. So it gives me confidence that they can continue to do it moving forward. I think Jeff Hafley really likes the way that those guys specifically play in his defense. And I just love the fact that the attention to detail and the communication have gotten so much better. And again, the ball skills, the tackling, all of those things. So there's reasons, I think, to have a level of concern. No question about it. I would like a little bit more talent there. I would not hate if they grabbed another corner in the top 100, if I'm being honest, but I'm not fearful either. I don't think that it is going to hold them back based on how they play defense, but it could limit Hafley a little bit in some of maybe more of the man-to-man coverages that he wants to call from time to time. But I still think you can win with this secondary, but they have to go improve it. Having Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams behind you as well certainly helps some things. The bigger thing to me is, can you get the pass rush up front, which will make things easier on Nixon and Hobbs and Valentine and Bullard, etc. So that's why I still think pass rush is 1A for this team. Poor Scouser Tommy, hello to you as well. Thanks for being here. How much do you think oh my God, we've got an hour already. Holy crap. That was like the quickest hour of questions that I think I've ever had. All right. I'm going to have to probably get to just members only chat after this one. So I'm going to kind of go a little bit more lightning round. How much do you think the comp pick formula factors into trading away or expiring contracts? I feel like people assume it's something versus nothing, but I can see Goody factoring comps. So that's into trading away or expiring contracts. Oh yeah, no, I think it definitely can play a part, but if you can get a trade for a player, it's usually better because you get that pick sooner and then you can go still spend in free agency. So for instance, if you feel like Romeo Doubs, right? Let's say the comp pick is going to be let's just say it's a 4th round pick. It's probably closer to a 5th. But let's just say it's a 4th round pick for Romeo Doubs in free agency. And let's say midway through this season, maybe the season's not going the way that you expected, and you can get a 4th round pick for Romeo Doubs. You're better off taking that 4th round pick for Romeo Doubs because A, you get it in 2026 rather than in 2027. So you get it a full year earlier. B, the pick that you get is not a comp round 4th pick. So it's going to be earlier in the 4th round this year than it would be in the end of the compensatory picks in the 4th round a year later. And if you were to go out and spend in free agency next year, it's going to cancel out that comp pick. So getting the trade and not having to worry about not spending in free agency so you can still get that 4th round comp pick is a factor in that as well. So for all of those reasons, if you can get a trade for it, it usually ends up being better, but it definitely factors into the equation. All right. I feel Hardman was brought in to replace Keyshawn Nixon as a returner. I think he could also be a bit of a field stretcher and a gadget guy. He has not really been a field stretcher in his career. I think Tyler Irvin's the name I will give you. Remember what Tyler Irvin brought to this offense: gadget guy, reverses, end arounds, kind of some gadgety and some decoy type plays, kick returner, punt returner. There's Mecole Hardman. That's what you're going to get. Probably a better receiving version of Irvin, not as good of a running back sort of version of Irvin, but that's what you're getting. You're getting kind of a Tyler Irvin sort of player for this offense. Fact or fiction, Packers take 2 linemen in the top 100 this year. I'll say in the first 4 rounds. I'm not going to say 2 in the top 3 rounds, but I'll say they take 2 in the top 4 rounds. I'm surprised they haven't used Bo Melton more in the returns. He had a 4.34 at the combine, and that was only a few years ago. So I think a couple things. Melton was never, I don't think he has the hands and maybe the agility to be a punt returner. I think he could be a kick returner, but Keyshawn Nixon has been used at that guy, and he's been a first-team All-Pro. So you're not taking Nixon really off of those. Could be something moving forward if Nixon doesn't want to do it, but I think that's the primary reason we haven't seen Melton. It's because, again, you had Nixon doing the kick returns. You weren't going to take him off of it, and Melton's not a punt return guy. Thank you so much. I don't know what you're thanking for, if it's me or somebody else, but gold, either way, you're welcome. Oh, most hated Minnesotan. That's why. That makes sense. Most hated Minnesotan is the best. Do you think Malik Heath could eventually play a significant role in the offense? I like him a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say significant, but I think he definitely earned some additional opportunities based off what he did at the end of last year. That being said, Malik Heath is very much in the realm of he's going to have to go make the team this year. He's not guaranteed a roster spot. He's going to have, come out, have a good camp. I could see a world in which he's easily like he could be in the top 4 going into the season with Watson out. Like there's easily a world in which Wicks, Reed, Dobbs, and Heath are your top 4 week 1 of next year. And you're 1 injury away from him being in the top 3. I could also see a world in which he doesn't make the team. And that's when you're a former undrafted free agent that hasn't exactly gone out and set the world on fire yet. That's the world that you live in. You got to go out and make the team. So I think he could take a step. I think he could be a player for this team, but he's going to have to go out and prove it in camp and make the team first, and then show that he's worthy of getting more and more snaps as time goes on. Matt Fraley, good to see you. Who do you have in your final 4? I have not filled. I've literally on my crazy to-do list, I have filling out my brackets tonight. So I've literally not done one yet. I kind of am like the purist of like, I kind of still like just doing one bracket and just kind of going with my gut. So that's on my to-do list tonight, Matt. I don't have my final 4 Sweet 16, anything else yet. McNeese State is probably going to be one of my upset picks. I know that much, but outside of that, I haven't filled one out yet. Let's see. I know you don't love Job, but it's my biggest pipe dream. We maintain 23. Again, I will talk about it tomorrow, and I will play devil's advocate in the reasons why Green Bay could and or should keep Jair Alexander. He's immensely talented and throws super well off platform. It's how it didn't look awful. I'm not sure what that is in regards to Lee, but I'm assuming we're talking about Love in some capacity. I still think we missed Aaron Jones. Need to re-sign him as a 3rd down back. Well, he re-signed with Minnesota already, so that will not be happening. Don't forget to hit like. I appreciate that, John. I'm happy with the McCole Hardman signing. Why? Because he takes Reed and Nixon off kick return and punt return. If he makes the team, absolutely. Our offense put up about 30 points a game last year with all those drops. Shore up those drops, and we can have 40-point games. I just hope they figure out the edge rush and pressure game. I don't necessarily see 40-point games coming, Dan, but I do think they can be more consistent on offense. That's for sure. I do think they can be one of the better offenses if they just kind of get out of their own way, which was one of the bigger issues this past year. And yes, I do agree. Pass rush is going to be a big one. Pause. Thank you for that. I think I want a Stonewall defense for once instead of the nuclear offense. Call me crazy. I'm all for that, Mo State of Minnesota. And give me a top 3 defense. Sign me the hell up. And that's why I was kind of hoping for that premier pass rusher, because I think you add a premier pass rusher to this team, and I think they can be a legit top 3, maybe even top 2, maybe even 1 defense with what they have on this team. But I do think they need to be better as a pass rushing unit if they want to get to that level. Bullard was pretty rough in the slot last year. It seemed like he just didn't have the short area quickness. I'd love to see Hobbs play there with CV on the outside, but don't think we see that. I believe what we will see is in there's going to be a base nickel and there's going to be a obvious passing nickel. I think in the base nickel, you're going to see Hobbs and Nixon on the outside. This could change if different players are brought in via the draft or whatever, if Jair stays. But I think you're going to see Hobbs and Nixon on the outside with Bullard in the slot against more 2 tight end sets and things like that. Then in more obvious passing downs, I think you're going to see Bullard off the field with Hobbs in the slot, and then Nixon and probably Valentine or Jair if he stays, or maybe insert new corner if they take one in the first 3 rounds. I think you'll see more corner-driven nickel formations against more obvious passing downs, and Bullard be taken off the field. This, by the way, is why I was pretty aggressively saying I think Bullard is a better safety than a slot player coming out of college, and that would be his long-term position. Issue now is Evan Williams clearly the better safety. Xavier McKinney's not getting taken off the field, and you're not putting 3 safeties out there. So if you want to get and find a way for Javon to be on the field, he probably needs to be in that nickel / slot position. I think playing him again in 2 tight end sets in more obvious, more rundown nickel situations, that could be a way that you still get him on the field and use some of his better strengths to your advantage. And then, kind of take him off the field in more obvious passing downs. Danny Joe Heron just became a member, and I have watched the last 2 years religiously. Thanks for all you do. That is awesome, my friend. Thank you for that support. I appreciate you a ton. Do the Packers place too much emphasis on versatility versus players who are great at specific things? Makes me think hearing your comments about having 6 edge rushers, but no designated pass rush guy. I think Goot is a little bit too picky when it comes to that stuff. I appreciate the overall philosophy of it. I really do. I think it's overall a good thing. I think it helps Green Bay more than it hurts them. I just wish it wasn't quite as rigid, and I wish there would be the flexibility to say, hey, we can have all of this flexibility and these guys that can do a little bit of everything, but also we can have 1 designated pass rusher. We can have one linebacker that's better against the run. Like, I think there's a little bit more ability with a 53-man roster plus 2 practice squad call-ups, a 16-man practice squad, an international pathway player. I think there's a little bit more flexibility there, and I wish Goot just used a little bit more of it, but I do like and appreciate the overall philosophy with which they go with. Let's see. That was Ja. Let's see. Jim. Is there a source that lists all the team visits for all the players? Do teams know who visits, who give them insight, who pick in front of you? I know Packers Wire and Acme Packing Company do a phenomenal job. I don't know other teams, but both Packers Wire and Acme Packing Company do a phenomenal job of tracking who visits Green Bay in their pre-draft visits. So those are the two that I always go to when I'm checking that, because it does mean something to Green Bay. And usually I'm keeping an extra eye on that and make sure that I watch anyone that was in for a pre-draft visit. Football is hope. I love that, Dennis. Please stop saying that they're not a big name signings. All signings are big to our team in free agency. I mean, sure. Okay. I think there's a difference. I think there's tiers to free agency. I don't think there were really a lot of tier 1 players in this free agency. So I think Green Bay went tier 2 shopping with Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks. I mean, I think if you were to poll the average fan, if Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs are big names, I think more people in Packers Nation probably had to look up who Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks were than that knew them. So I think by default, I'm pretty safe in saying that they weren't big name signings. That's not to say that they weren't big for Green Bay. They very clearly are going to have a massive impact in Green Bay, regardless of what happens. If they fail, having those 2 big contracts on failures of players is going to have a massive impact in Green Bay. If they succeed, well, guess what? That's going to have a huge impact too. So it's not to say their impact will not be felt. It's just saying that these were maybe not names that for most fans rolled off the tongue as soon as Green Bay signed them to huge contracts. Will Carroll jumping in late. I can't find a reason why Hardman hasn't gotten more snaps. And why is it that you need size and speed to stretch a defense? I know Hardman and Melton are both fast. Reed too, maybe. It just is a little bit harder to separate. There's so much physicality at the top of that route. And if you've got a corner that's got a little bit of height, weight, size on you, it can be tough to separate from them. That's not the be all end all, right? Tyreek Hill is a phenomenal down the field threat, but you better have game-changing speed and route running ability, which is what Tyreek Hill is really, really good at. So there's different ways to win at the top of the route. Pure, unadulterated Tyreek Hill speed is definitely one of those ways, but you usually need a little bit of separation within that, which usually comes via route running. I don't think McCole Hardman or Bo Melton have shown that ability to separate yet. Obviously, you can be great at the point of attack and at the catch point, whether it be via late hands or just being crafty at the top of the route to gain a little bit of separation. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But, the overarching thing I would say is you're not a deep threat until you show you can be a deep threat. And so far, McCole Hardman and Bo Melton in their careers have not shown that they can be deep threats. Other players have. And there's not a specific height, weight. Sort of, you usually do need some speed in some way. But there's not necessarily an exact height or weight that you need to be. There's different ways to do it. But so far, Melton and Hardman have not shown that ability or propensity to be that deep threat down the field. New York Cheese said, good evening to you as well. Did we overpay for Banks? We'll find out. It's probably a slight overpay. The difference between Will Freeze and Aaron Banks is not that different. In fact, I think Banks fits better in Green Bay than Freeze would have, and Freeze got a very similar deal in Minnesota. So slight overpay maybe, but I think he can be a good player for the Packers. And let's see kind of how it plays out before we kind of jump to any conclusions. All right. Just want to make sure I got to those super chats. Richard says, go Pack, go. I've always been the type of person who doesn't judge negatively until I've seen them play. We don't know what we don't know. It's a fair philosophy. Brandon, hey Andy, why are center contracts generally smaller and in turn mean they have less value in a sense than guard or tackle? Center seems really tough considering the mental side of it. So I think you need to have somebody that's smart at that position in order to be able to play it at a decently high level with all the communication that goes up front, the checks, everything like that. I think that you can find a little bit. This isn't an exact perfect example, but if you look at most plays where there's a 4-man rush, a lot of times, not always, it's not a perfect example, but a lot of times it's tackle on end, guard on defensive tackle, guard on defensive tackle, tackle on end, and then that center helps where it's needed. clearly there is a lot of nuance that goes into that. You could get a 5-man rush, you can get blitzes, you can get heavy A-gap pressure that's going to attack that center more. And I think we are seeing teams start to value the interior of the offensive line more and more. Look at what Chicago did, going out and getting Drew Dahlman and Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson this offseason. They clearly valued it. The Eagles have valued it for years. And we really saw that pay off big in the Super Bowl this past year. Obviously, the Chiefs with Trey Smith valued it, franchise tagging him. We're seeing it become a much bigger thing because teams are attacking it more, right? Teams are going to find whatever your weakness is. If your weakness is on the interior of the offensive line, guess what? They're coming for it. They're double A gapping blitzes you. They're gonna twist and stunt, put your center in disadvantageous situations. They're gonna do the old Zadarius Smith where they're gonna line up their best pass rusher right over your center, and they're gonna bring 5 guys, so that center has to go one-on-one with that super talented pass rusher. They're gonna find ways to embarrass whoever your weak spot is, right? That's why I think Green Bay moved on from Josh Myers and why I think it's starting to get valued a little bit more. But in its simplest sense, center's usually a little bit more of the helper than the guys that are taking on that initial point of attack. But again, I think that even that philosophy is starting to get called into question a little bit more with how defenses are attacking offensive lines. Well, Carol, if you had to predict one mid underrated player on defense to get to a Pro Bowl level next year, who would you pick? Probably Quay. Just because I think you're starting to see. I just got to make sure before I answer this. Yeah, I'll say Quay. You're starting to hear like Xavier McKinney say he can be the best linebacker in football. He had that 3-game stretch last year that looked really, really good, and he's super talented. So I'm not saying I expect it. I kind of expect more of the same from Quay, if I'm being honest. But we've also seen some times where sometimes the name recognition, the former first-round pick, like if he just has a season where he like picks off like 4 passes, even if those passes are like off of tips, or maybe he, just gets thrown a couple balls and he hangs onto them or whatever. Like all of a sudden 4 picks, maybe gets a couple sacks as a blitzer, which we've seen in his career. And all of a sudden you start looking at his stat line. It's like, oh, dude had 120 tackles plus 4 picks plus 2.5 sacks plus a forced fumble. And you start looking at his box scoring like, oh, wow, that's like a first team all pro. And I think those things can sort of happen sometimes. And sometimes we see those jumps happen a little bit later from linebackers. So I'll say Quay Walker for that answer. Not even saying that it's necessarily going to be like this huge jump, but could see in the right situation how maybe he would make a Pro Bowl. Bullard for a 3rd-round pick, especially if we draft a corner. It's not a strong safety class like last season. Just a thought. 0.0% chance. I don't know why Alexa just went off on me. I didn't think I said anything like Alexa, but that's all right. Ryan, hi Andy. Will the Packers go after Sanders' son? No, they will not. I don't see any way in which that happens. Am I missing something here? Like they're not going to go after Shedeur Sanders. Are you talking? Is there a different Sanders? Are we talking BJ Sander? Does BJ Sander have a punter son in the draft? No, I don't see any way in which that happens. Beast Bumblebee. Look at that. Like the logo, like the handle there. So Beast Bumblebee, thanks so much for becoming a member. And New York Cheese said, thanks, Andy. Great stuff. Good night, everyone. Go Pack Go. New York Cheese said, thank you very much. It is time, went a little bit longer. Like I said, that first hour just flew freaking by. Sorry I didn't get to everyone today. I was hoping to, but I think I got to all member chats and all super chats. So thank you guys again for that. Oh, Dean Sanders. All right, gotcha. I haven't watched him yet, so I'd have to go and I know it's Deion Sanders. Shiloh Sanders, the corner. Gotcha. I have to go back and watch him a little bit more. I thought you meant Shedeur. I'm like, in what way are they're going to go after Shedeur? I don't see any way in which that happens. But yeah, I'll have to go and watch Shiloh a little bit more. Andy, you're the Herman. My hot take is they don't draft wide receiver. I think they like this group and will let them play out. I will somehow find a way, remind me, Mike, I'll somehow find a way to get you a free Pack-A-Day membership if they leave their 2025 draft without taking a receiver at all. That'll be on me if you end up being right on that. I don't think there's any chance here. But on the flip side, Michael, if they do take a wide receiver, you have to sign up for at least 1 month of a membership. So that's our little bet. You don't have to actually back it up, but that'll be my bet with you, Michael. I appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you so much for being here. Cannot thank you enough. Always super fun. No happy hour this week. We did our members Q&A last week. I'm going to do one members Q&A next week, either Monday or Tuesday. And then again, I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to have a lot of awesome episodes lined up for you. Make sure you're checking out the Pack-A-Day radio show on The Fan in Milwaukee. You can find it on the Odyssey app or thefanmilwaukee.com. Pack-A-Day podcast audio channel, where we've got usually 3 to 4 episodes coming out every single day. Andrew Merteg and Kyle Fellows doing awesome work with their On the Clock series. Ross Uglum with the daily draft, our normal team with the stuff that they've got coming out every day. It's a really, really awesome group of people that are doing amazing work. So check out the audio podcast if you're not doing so already. Day before the draft, Hagemeister Park. What is it? 7 to 9 p.m. I want to say, right? 7 to 9 p.m. Hagemeister Park, April 23rd. Day before the draft, going to be doing a live event there, Q&A, meet and greet, all of that great stuff. So make sure to check out that if you're going to be in town for the draft. I am 99.9% sure I'm going to be doing a post-draft live event as well, just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on that, but that should be Saturday night following the draft. I'll keep you posted on the details of that as much as, or as soon as possible. But, oh yeah, and the Timber Rattlers game, Thursday, the week before the draft, Aaron Nagler and I are doing a live event at the Timber Rattlers game 1 week before the draft on that Thursday night. So there are tickets available to that as well. Make sure to check out all that great stuff. Cannot thank you for all the support enough. I'll see you guys very, very soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.